Welcome to Disrupted Science, the occasional conversation between the authors of the upcoming book, How the Internet Disrupted Science, now available for pre-order. I'm Joy Moore, here with my co-author Ken Anderson, and today is Wednesday, May 13th, 2026. Hey, Kent.
Hey Joy, how's it going?
It's going well.
Good, good. And we're getting quicker on this. We were told that so you leave me hanging sometimes, and people are noticing.
I know it's not a trick. I really want to
Uh,
know how's it going. How have you been?
I have been, but I have something to show you. Hold on.
Okay.
There it is, our first ARC
Oh,
with all the
yeah.
words, all the little wordies that we put in the
And the
order we put them
footnotes
in,
and
and
the
all
index.
the footnotes and the index, and the three little problems we know about.
So these are the copies that are getting sent out to people who want to read it before it's published.
Yeah, so it kind of has the self-publishing, hot off of the
Yeah.
photocopier feel to it, but it's nice to see. It's a good size. It's a nice size, but it'll
Yeah,
be
it's got some
hardcover with a
heft.
slip case, and yeah, it's the real
Yeah.
deal. So it's physically here, and then they have a special back to it that talks
Well, I
about,
think that,
the ARC
yeah,
back to.
that's not going to be the back of the real book, though.
No, no,
That
no.
that's just
That
the promo copy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just the promo copy text. So that was kind of cool, kind of cool, legit. We're getting there step by step, but that's kind of what we want to talk about is where we're headed. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we've been doing this for what, about a year? I can't even believe it.
I know. We started
It's
in like the end of May, early June last year. Last year.
right when
Wow.
we were finishing the book.
Yeah.
And we started the podcast because we had more things to talk about once we had to put pencils down on the book
Yeah.
and and we wanted to continue the conversation and I think
Right.
we've done a pretty good job of that. Um
Hmm. Opinions vary, but generally people seem to like it. So that's
yeah.
good. Yeah. And it's also been good because it's we just a lot of happy accidents or happy things came out of it. We learned how to do a podcast,
Well,
which
I would say that you learned how to be a podcast producer. I don't know that that was one of your, on your bucket list for.
it was not. It still isn't.
So you've done a great job.
Oh, well, thanks. But you beat me
And
to getting your microphone act together, that's for sure.
I sure did.
Stop it. You always sound better. But one of the things that I think has been a theme of the digital age is the loss of conversation. I think podcasts kind of brought that back to life, and that's one of the appeals that they have is that you can hear two people or three people or four people banter and talk and jostle and joke and just be a little bit like fun and interesting and human
Yeah,
and
and you can kind of read between the lines or hear between the lines. I listen to podcasts most of the day.
hmm
That's my primary media consumption. Um, and some of them I like and others I don't. But hearing people talk about things off the cuff, maybe researched, maybe produced, put together, is a really interesting way to understand how thoughtful people are putting their thoughts together. And
yeah, and people who have good chemistry. I remember the very first time I heard Kara Swisher interview Scott Galloway,
mhm.
and you just heard them like talking, and you're like, oh, those two need to get a room.
Yeah,
But they had such good chemistry, intellectual chemistry, that you knew something was going to come out of that, and you could feel it. And we were just texting today about Adam Becker's podcast, and he had a guest on that he'd never spoken to
she's
before, and those two are going to have an
yeah.
intellectual exchange in the now and in the future that's going to be really memorable. I think they're going to have a long term kind of interest in each
Right.
other's works and all of that. It really clicked.
And that came about because he wrote a book and she read it, and she wrote a book and he hasn't read it yet, but he's really interested in what she's talking about. And so this kind of put things into print um, for prosperity, but
Hmm.
then continue the conversation I think is really fascinating.
Well, I hope you're correct. We put it into print for prosperity instead of posterity, but
Oh, sorry.
maybe both.
Po well, yes, I think it's both. Uh,
Yes,
yes.
posterity and our prosperity. We're going to get rich. Going to get rich from our book.
No, we're certainly not going to do that. So, but
Yeah.
we've had, as part of this experiment in podcasting, we've been able to talk to a lot of really cool people, over the last year. And so I think it's worth kind of running down the different people who've been willing to spend their time with us to talk about what they do, how it relates to what we think about, and what people who listen to this podcast might want to know about.
Yep. And just to make sure people understand, this is all going somewhere. This is not just one of those retrospective episodes where we're just filling time, but we're going through this to tell you about something that's going to change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know
In a
us.
good way.
We got an agenda. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, but so I think one of the nicest things about doing this has been discovering that there are really, really smart people who are willing and more than capable of talking with us and educating us. And they've been really generous of their time and their expertise. And it's been kind of shocking how good the guests have been that we've been able
Hmm.
to get. So we've had numerous AI experts,
Hmm.
really smart ones.
Yeah, and not the CEO says a thing AI experts, uh, professors who actually understand both the mathematics and the cognitive and the philosophies around
Hmm.
AI. Um,
Yep, yep. Yeah, so experts and not just promoters, right?
right.
Yeah, not shills, AI shills, we'll call them. Because we like
No.
using words from the 1930s.
Yeah, well, no AI shills have volunteered to be on our podcast.
No, they wouldn't do well.
No.
Librarians, we've had some great librarians.
Hmm. And librarians in the sense of, I mean, that they're very grounded in serving their communities and serving their students and serving their faculties as
Hmm.
guardians of information, as procurement officials, but really understanding what their communities need in order to thrive. And that was
Hmm.
really interesting.
Yeah, and it really connects with us with because we think that that's what publishers should be doing too.
Right. And librarians are the throughput from the publishers. And
Yeah.
so understanding more about what librarians want and need is really important to understanding how the publishing community should change or evolve.
Right. And what's interesting is already, I'm seeing, so we had the AI experts and the librarians, and we had librarians who were having to deal with AI, right?
Yeah. They didn't like
And
it.
so, yeah, all of these things kind of, connected in a way. And then we also talked to some historians.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, if you want to understand the present, it's good to understand the past. And
mhm,
it's good to be reminded that things are in context and
mhm.
they came from a place, and that might give an indication of where it might go next.
Yep. And it's interesting, the Adam Becker podcast, they talked about how the AI systems are a mirror, are trying to make the past look like the future.
Yeah.
That
And
was a really good
yeah, and so, oh gosh,
analogy.
I don't remember her name, but
I don't either.
we'll figure it out. But she's got a book called The AI Mirror,
Hmm.
and so a lot of her research has been into looking at metaphors for AI, and a mirror is looking back at well, it's reflecting light, and
Mm-hmm.
it's past tense.
Mm-hmm. Her name
And
is Shannon Valor.
Shannon Valor, yes,
Yeah.
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 And I think that that's what we've been kind of, struggling with. It's this idea that you take science and put it into AI and call it the future when it's really just showing you what the past is.
Right. And not even that accurately.
Well, no, I mean, it's
Yeah.
terrible. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
So,
so, hmm
and we also talked with business professors. We talked about incentives and how that affects behavior and drives and helps you predict what's going to come. We talked to
hmm
artists who create things from scientific information in the case of forensic artists, but also who use AI to create art that
hmm
is still, when I see some of the stuff that Max Rigsby does, I'm still just like amazed at how
Yeah.
good and pointed it is and how much it feels like a 19th century political cartoon. I mean,
hmm
we've talked to scientists who
Yep.
actually know their stuff, which is reassuring. And
hmm
also a reminder that we all have to be humble enough to recognize our boundaries of expertise, which is something that a lot of the people involved with tech don't seem to have
hmm
they have the different H word, hubris, instead of humility.
Yes. But scientists who are really trying to evolve their disciplines, who are trying to discover new things, are
Hmm.
looking to the new. And they are being bombarded in the literature with people who are recycling stuff from the past.
Right. And also scientists like Jeremy Berg who are concerned about the providing for the scientists of the future and making sure
hmm
that they have the stability to do the inquiries that they need to do over a long period of time, and watching them being undermined by all sorts of treacherous people and who have other
hmm
agendas. So we talked to some up and coming leaders
Yeah.
to get the perspective of the next generation, and that was really reassuring in a lot of
hmm
ways. And
Yeah, there are people who are younger and smarter than us, Kent, and
it's
we got
hard to
their back.
believe. Hard to believe. No, actually, it's they're fantastic, and I'm huge fans of
Yeah.
them. And
Yeah.
that's I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Darn it all, we have done such a disservice to this generation and the one just behind us and the one behind that one because they're fantastic. They're just fantastic. Every time I run into one and see how much energy and ambition and intelligence and you know verve they have, I'm just like, gosh, why can't we make the world better for them? But we're trying.
hmm
We're trying. And
Yep.
other people who are trying are the public health experts.
Yeah, we talked to Beth Jacobs, who's really fighting the good fight
Hmm.
and the intersection between scientific publishing and what's going on in public health policy, as well as public health funding, is more important than ever. And
Yep.
so we're going to keep following what she's doing and help support them as much as we can.
Yep. Same as Stand Up for Science. We didn't get her on the podcast, but we did talk to Colette
Yeah, we did talk to
Delawala,
Colette. Yeah.
and
But yeah,
she's,
we're big fans, and if there's anything that we can do to help fight the good fight, we're here to do that.
yep. We've talked to Silicon Valley insiders who,
Yeah.
oh my,
Why? Where's this money coming from and where's it going?
and why are
Uh,
these people so crazy at this point instead of just being
they're
rich
getting
and
cr- they're getting
beneficent?
crazier by the day. Just be
They are.
rich and go
They are.
away. Honestly.
Just sail off on your yacht, please. We've talked to philosophers who think about the big picture and the why and the
hmm
wherefore of it all. And then we talk to editors who actually do the work and have to face the daily grind of papers coming in and
hmm
authors being finicky and reviewers needing help and all the little scut work and detail work that goes into making a journal, you know, look like a pristine final product, but is actually a lot of a lot of daily effort that goes into that.
Yeah. And I think we could, in the future, we're going to delve more into that, that
Mm-hmm.
being an editor in chief or a editor of a journal is a different thing than what a lot of people might understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's gonna help elucidate a lot of the quality issues that we're seeing.
Yeah.
But
And
we've
we also
also talked, yeah, we've also talked about like, I don't know. I was thinking about like, I don't know what our first podcast was. It was so awkward. I was so awkward. Um, and not that I'm less awkward now, but we've also been talking about current events and, just looking at what's going on in the administration, but also in the internet. And so we got some early indications of what was going to start fueling MAHA in terms of the
mm,
scientific publishing record. And so I remember that we talked about that dude Kirk Milhone
oh
because I
yeah.
saw him on the treadmill at the gym, and then it turns out now he's at the FDA, I think, or the CDC. I can't remember.
I don't know. He's wandering the halls of power for no
Yeah.
good reason and no good purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've been following all of that nonsense for the last year, as well as AI
Mm-hmm.
and what publishers are doing with AI, but also what publishers are contributing to in terms of AI for medical information.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been keeping us busy, but I think the jury's not out. Both MAHA and AI for medicine are not good.
Yeah, well, not currently, and I think one of the things that's going to my prediction, if I were to make a prediction, is that inference engines and advanced machine learning will find narrow applications that will be useful, and that's okay. That's what normal tech does, is it comes out and says, okay, in very carefully
Mm,
controlled environments with very good
right.
guardrails and a lot of monitoring, this powerful technology can work.
But that's the tech part of it.
Yeah,
And we
right.
can predict that. What we can't predict is the business part of it, where
Yeah. Oh, it's getting.
they're hyping stuff that's no good. They're getting people involved and they're, raising a ton of money and
Well, and it's getting saucy, right? Because Sam Altman and Elon Musk are in court right now, and
they're
there's all
all in
sorts of
court.
other stuff
Yeah.
going on behind the scenes that we keep hearing a little bit about here and there in dribs and drabs, where you know money and power bring out the best in people, obviously, right?
Yes. Yeah. And it's all discoverable now,
I know
dudes.
lawyers. I love lawyers, but I mean, the best part of this is so we closed the book, on the book, and then we were able to keep learning, and I think we've stayed current, but also the podcast has been efficient, at least from my perspective, for us quickly talking about things and putting them in context. I mean, we were able to jump on a couple of things that happened, but also,
Hmm.
we get guests who take us pretty far pretty fast in ways that you know, we just learned a lot. So it's been
Hmm.
really useful. Um,
Hmm.
so but we've got to pivot now because we've got the book coming out. So we've decided to focus on some other things going forward with the podcast. First of all, it's going to be less about kind of beat by beat staying up with things, but we'll continue to do that as appropriate, but it'll be kind of a higher bar for when we decide to come out with
Yes.
something like
Well,
that.
and there's still the geyser that is
Yeah,
that's the beat.
that's going to
So
keep going. Yeah,
yeah.
but the podcast will be less about us learning new things in a way. And but we also have some other projects in the works, and that's going to be kind of the focus going forward for our time and attention. And then once we get that to a certain point, we'll tell you all about it.
Hmm.
But that's going to make this a little bit more sporadic, and we are just aren't sure of the timing. So we wanted to let everybody who listens to this know that we might be a little bit spotty in appearing in your podcast feed for
Mm-hmm.
the next couple of months at least. And so please keep us in your feed. We'll show up when we've got something. And I was telling you about a podcast I love that did that. They kind of burned through it's a music podcast, the band that they cover, they burned through all their albums and songs and all this stuff over like 5 years. And then
Yeah.
they said, we're going to take a break. But I kept the subscription going. And now they have episodes that just show up once in a while. And it's like,
Uh-huh.
it's always such a treat because I like them. And, hopefully we'll have that same effect. So,
Yeah, we're t and to be sure, we're always available if somebody has something that they want us to dive in on, or if somebody wants to come on and talk to us about something. Like things are moving forward and in ways that are, when we put pencils down on the book a year ago, we're like, is this book going to be irrelevant in a year? It's actually more relevant than it was. And
hmm
so we've got to focus on what are we going to do with what we learned in the book, what we've, you know, learned in the meantime, and
right.
what are we going to do next? And
Yeah.
so, but they're all relevant to anybody who is actually listening to this
Thank
podcast at this
goodness.
time.
It's actually exciting. It's actually some of the
Yeah, it's
things we
super
have cooking. I mean,
exciting.
it
Yeah.
actually is taking something quite exciting to tear us away from this. So it's
Yeah.
not like we're just, getting lazy or, excited or just giving up and focusing on the book. We've got a lot of exciting stuff to do.
Hmm.
So we may have episodes like you have come to know. We may have some announcements about the book or have interviews with people who are involved with it in some way or involved with book selling or something like that. Because some of the bookstores that we have signings at are kind of interesting. It'd be interesting to talk to some of those people. We may have a podcast from a signing
Yeah.
or a talk. We may have announcements about this, our super secret project
No.
that's somewhere down the road. Or we may just jump in if something really strange happens and we want to talk about it and we feel like we're qualified to. We might just pop up and try to get into your ears and tell you about it. So
Yeah. Now that Kent knows how to make a podcast, we can do it whenever we ask him to.
there's no stopping me now. There's no stopping me now. I've got all of Lucas's music queued up for Provoke the Truth and got a template, people. So all right, so stay subscribed to the feed, and we'll show up soon enough with something we hope you'll find interesting. We're just not entirely sure when that might be. So, ready for Discoveries of the Week? We're still going to have that.
I sure am. Maybe we should
Okay.
just do a podcast of discoveries of the week.
I know. It
Two
wouldn't be so
minutes.
bad. Well, let's dive into this week's and then we'll decide. All right, here
We'll
we
see if
go.
anybody cares.
All right, so Discoveries of the Week. I guess it's my turn to start off, and mine's really quick and simple. So, I was at an event this past weekend where, for the very first time, and I had a cake pop, which I've
You
never
never had
had.
a cake pop?
It's the reaction every time I told somebody it was my first time having a cake pop.
Seriously. Yeah,
I know.
it's a bite of cake on a stick. It's better than a cupcake because cupcake, you gotta take the paper off and then you only want to eat half of it, right?
Well, these were beautifully handmade
Mm-hmm.
with in the shapes of flowers
Artisanal.
and birds. With what's that frosting?
The
You,
fondant.
the fondant with fondant on it, and then outline of other frosting, and they were beautifully done. And it was yellow cake and chocolate cake, and you could alternate and figure out. You had to figure out which was which, and all that good stuff. But yeah, my very first time having cake pops, and I give them two thumbs up,
I
or as
agree with
Rocky
you.
would say, two thumbs up.
No, I also am a fan of the cake pops because I like more frosting than cake and
hmm
because they're a compact thing and you can just do it all in one bite.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So two thumbs up
Very
on cake
cool.
pops. That was my discovery of the week. Not a bad one.
No, that's a great one.
Yeah. All right,
Well,
what's yours, Joy?
mine is not as fun, but is something that I found really interesting. The other day I was listening to All Things Considered on NPR, And I love that show because they just pop in these little local news programs. And this one was about jaywalking and the
Okay.
history of jaywalking and jaywalking laws and why it is actually relevant today.
There's a
Uh,
history to jaywalking. All right.
there sure is. So it all goes back to Kansas City. And in the 20th century, Kansas City was the birthplace for jaywalking as a term and as a law.
Mm.
And now today, Kansas City is the pioneer for getting rid of jaywalking laws.
Hmm.
Um, so the funnest part about this whole history is that the origin of the term jay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a Midwestern term for an idiot or a silly person. So
Right.
they just put the word J in front of dumb
Right. In front
yeah
of Walker.
yeah, what is it? It's yeah, it in front of a verb. Like if somebody's doing something in a dumb way, they're
Right.
a J.
But the college, their mascot is the Jayhawk. So is that a
Right. But it and it I checked into that. It's
uh,
that's not related.
that's a head fake?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I
All right.
mean, jaybirds are jerk birds, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
They're related to the
Yeah. And
bluebirds, and
blue
I'm not
jays
going
are
to talk.
jerks too. Yeah.
Yeah, they already moved back in, and
Really? Your
they're
birds are back?
repopulating. Yeah, I give up. Um,
You've
but
been
anyway,
defeated.
back to jaywalking. What was really interesting about the story, and we'll put a link in the show notes, and I really encourage people to listen to it because it connects a lot of dots about a number of different things that are relevant today. The purpose of putting jaywalking laws on the books where people could be arrested or fined for doing that was in the time where machines were prioritized over humans.
Mm.
So cars are now on the
Mm-hmm.
street.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was giving preference to the cars and
You're
the
privileging
people.
the cars.
Yeah, they were privileging the cars.
Mm-hmm.
And then that just kind of stuck for a long time. But in the wake of George Floyd, the Kansas City police started to look at over policing measures
Mm.
and disproportionate arrests and fines. And they found that more people of color were getting violations for jaywalking a few years ago,
Right. Right.
and they had been the whole time. And so
Yeah.
they took it off the books, and now other towns and cities and states are revoking the jaywalking laws.
Yep.
And it's kind of a nice story in the context of we're up against the machines. Now you have the right to walk across the street and not
Right.
get thrown in jail or have to pay a
Right. Right. Right.
fine,
Right.
you
They're
know.
privileging people again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Hmm.
So I have a weird curveball to add to this.
Okay.
Okay. So
Have you been thrown in jail for jaywalking?
not yet,
Okay.
but anything's possible. But so George Floyd was in Minnesota, right, in Minneapolis when
Mm-hmm.
that happened. So the band the Jayhawks is
Uh-huh.
refers to the Kansas mascot, but is a band from Minnesota. So there's another tie between Minnesota and Kansas. So it's got me thinking
Ah,
something else going on there.
yeah.
So, and the Jayhawks are a great band. So that's another
Hmm.
little thing. So
Well, it's a lot has come from the Midwest, and I'm
that's where I
learning
had my
more
cake
about it.
pops. So
That's where you got your cake pop.
that's where I got my cake pops this weekend.
You can
So
cake pop and jaywalk in the Midwest.
there you go.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks to our friends at Provoke the Truth for the music. If you have topics you want us to cover, and we will do that on demand, please email us at disruptedscience@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you always. And then you can also keep up with developments at the Geyser. where you can subscribe to support our efforts and keep an eyeball out for our book that's getting some press.
There you
If you
go.
want to leave a
Thanks.
review, make sure it's a good one.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye.